Hey, I was thinking I'd do a video kind of off the cuff. I like listening to long, rambly videos while I'm working, so I figured why not make one because I feel like talking about one of my most beloved movies, Conan the Barbarian, of course, the Arnold version. Um, a lot of people have movies that they just love, mostly due to nostalgia or something like that, but still it's like I can objectively look at movies, and then I can also like look at them through some sort of kind of naive, kind of innocent view, where I look at movies like Conan that are near and dear to me from childhood and all that. But then I can also kind of uh, uh, get to know new movies. Like I only recently saw The Warriors from 1979, like a year ago or something like that, and I immediately fell in love with that. It's a certain quality in a movie that makes me really like fall in love with it. Because when I look at Conan, I can definitely have that objective kind of approach where I can look at the acting quality, apart from James Earl Jones, of course, and some of the other kind of things that are going on in it, and kind of like, it's not the greatest of all time, but it's the most beloved of all time for myself personally, and kind of like a lot of people, like people get real emotional sometimes when they watch like trailers for an up and coming Star Wars movie or something like that, and there's also Disney movies or something like that. There's people who like just love, like Beauty and the Beast or something like that. They know every song by heart and all that stuff. For me, Conan is like that, where almost any line can just, give me goosebumps and stuff like that. So I figured I'd talk about it. No beer this time, and trying to watch my weight. And yeah, beer kind of bloats you right the hell up, but fear not, I have a substitute, a Crystal Head vodka from from Dan Aykroyd. So yeah, I'll have a little something to kind of ease me up. Not an alcoholic, but still, cheers to Conan. Uh, that is one of the better vodkas I've actually ever drank. So hats off to Dan Aykroyd for that one. Yeah, with Conan, it's there's just endless facets to it that I just love. It's like it's the design of all the props, costumes, and sets. It's the design of the entire world. It's the soundtrack. It's the look of all the actors involved, and just everything about it. And the more I've kind of watched it on, in my adult days, the more I've kind of been able to kind of see further into it, because I know the kind of director and especially writer that John Milius, who made it, is. And especially after watching movies like Apocalypse Now and stuff like that, when you return to Conan after that, you definitely get to see it in a little bit of a different light. And after having delved into different sort of different books and whatnot in my adult days, seeing it after that, it really echoes different kind of tones and levels that I didn't kind of get as a kid. It's not one of those movies that begs to be like interpreted. It's like, oh, it's a surreal movie, Conan the Barbarian, or anything like that. But there definitely is a lot of stuff in there that's not there just because it looks cool, but because there's stuff that are like personal and meaningful to John Milius. And the movie itself starts with a Friedrich Nietzsche quote, and I know Milius is fond of Nietzsche's writing, and having read a lot of Nietzsche's work, he's one of those kind of great thinkers of history that I feel has kind of like a like an on-off, kind of like a Jekyll Hyde kind of thing, where half of what he says is just pure gold, and half of what he says is batshit insane. So and childish, and ridiculous. So it's easy to like just put quotes. Like, let's just pick the good bits and put quotes, and spread that on Facebook or whatnot. And I can see Nietzsche's influences in a lot of the stuff going on in Conan, especially with the stuff I least agree with, which is, of course, the Ubermensch stuff. It's like the movie starts with the quote that "what doesn't kill us makes us stronger," and it's the whole thing kind of kicks off. The first bit of dialogue, if you don't count the introduction dialogue by Mako there, Conan's father giving him his life lesson about the riddle of steel. It's an extremely cynical and nihilistic kind of lesson to teach a child. It's like, look here, son, the world is a harsh place. You can't trust anybody. Don't trust anybody. No one is dependable. What is dependable is a piece of steel. It's a sword, an instrument of martial force. That you can kill people with. So it's like and it's right off the bat when the movie kicks off and the village gets attacked by Thulsa Doom's forces. It's pretty much that he kind of nullifies his entire message there. The father does, when he first kind of preaches to his son that it's you can't trust anybody. It's just numero uno, and that's all that matters. And you have to look out for yourself. And ain't nobody gonna help you, and you can't trust anybody to help you, type of thing. And when the enemies attack, he himself sacrifices himself to protect those he cares about, his community, his fellow villagers, his family, his culture, everything, because it all gets decimated. It's a complete genocide takes place, where an entire group of people, entire culture, language, religion, everything gets just snuffed out of existence, and all in the name of might makes right. It's why does Thulsa Doom gather his forces and kill just a random patch of villagers out in the middle of nowhere, who are posing no threat to him or anything of that sort? There's no resources to be found. And he himself explains it later. Those were the days when I was still looking for steel worth more than gold and jewels. He was looking for the answer Conan's father was talking about, the riddle of steel. And it's a great little, I love the kind of takes where there's the father's take on the riddle of steel kind of thing, where it's steel is the end all be all. Steel is the only trustworthy ally. You can't trust men, women, or beasts. You can't trust anyone, even though he gets torn apart by beasts, that are the trusty allies of his enemies, kind of thing. But it's like, again, returning to the Nietzsche thing, someone who was extremely moist for Nietzsche's Ubermensch stuff was the founder of Objectivism, Ayn Rand. And boy, what a retard she is. The creator of such great wise words as altruism is a moral evil, and other such gems. It's very in that kind of vein that Conan's father has, his worldview, where it's very much this kind of everyone looks out for themselves, and everyone is serving their self-interests and bearing the responsibility of looking out for themselves and whatnot. And it's really cynical and really harsh and really nihilistic. So Conan, like, already before seeing any of the horrors of the real world that he gets like subjected to, already is getting like raised up as basically this kind of this kind of uh, the term escapes me, but this kind of a you know, cold-shouldered, you know, cold-blooded, you know, um, not a lot of love for one's fellow man, you know, type of a misanthrope. That's the word I was kind of looking for. Yeah, kind of gets raised to be a misanthrope, and it's kind of, I would love the opening scene of the father's sword getting forged. I would love that scene if Conan, as a child, wasn't there, present, because then it would be kind of an. It could be easily like an amalgamation where it's like a representative of Conan being like born or being like uh, consummated or something like that, because they're like the father is forging the steel, and you know, it's like he's, you know, that whole his whole mantra of the steel being the only thing you can trust, and then instilling that in his child, and it's like this phallic object of killing that he's just forging, like, oh yeah, beat that sword, beat that phallus, and, yeah, and then shoving it into the snow, and his wife, you know, making the decorations and strap work and whatnot. And you know, the end result is this instrument of the riddle of steel, which he then you know, bestows on Conan. And I love that his take is one way, and then, you know, later on when Thulsa Doom gives his take on the riddle of steel, it's something completely different. And then when Conan kind of discovers his own take on the riddle of steel, but with Conan not being, you know, a man of too many words, especially in the movie, uh, it's kind of left to your interpretation. I don't know if it's left too much to your interpretation, because I've seen so many people kind of think that taking what Thulsa Doom says on face value. Conan's father says that the riddle of steel is all about, you know, the steel being the trustworthy ally that you need to rely on to safeguard yourself and protect yourself and make it in the world. And then Thulsa Doom, in his quest to search for the riddle of steel in his youth, as it were, after just genociding, if that's an actual verb, just instead of just, you know, taking people down with the sword, he hypnotizes Conan's mom to give herself for him to kill. You know, and when he explains his version of the riddle of steel to Conan, it completely like is nullifying Conan's father's perspective of the steel is strong. Steel is the only thing strong enough to safeguard you and all that. And his perspective is that instead of basically using an instrument of martial force on others, it's much more powerful to impose your will on others to make them off themselves for you because you demand it. And both of them are basically, when it comes to the discipline of steel, both of them are exercising basically discipline of using force over others, like cutting people down, whether it's through this you know, ornate tool or through suggestion. It's still exercising force and power over others. And that power in itself is, you know, the end game, the game, you know, of what the riddle of steel is, what the kind of the meaning of life kind of thing is in the movie's kind of mythology of people searching for the riddle of steel. And then Conan has his own version, because first when he fights Rexor, he breaks his father's sword, and that kind of nullifies the father's perspective. First, the father wasn't able to protect his family and his loved ones with the sword, and then Conan, once he gets built up to be the Ubermensch that he is. He just breaks that sword in half. It's just steel, nothing like a man, and when he confronts Thulsa Doom by the end, and Thulsa Doom tries to use the same hypnosis on him that he used on his mother, trying to get him pacified and stuff, Conan just snaps right out of it and just fuck you, just jams that broken father's sword into his neck and just decapitates him. And I think that mixed with Conan going to the wolf witch who gives the prophecy of this great warrior of great strength, a conqueror coming from the north to crush the snakes of the earth. And then Conan does it, but he does it through his perseverance and will. He conquers death and he's resurrected, and then he enacts vengeance, righteous vengeance. And then not only that, afterwards he also saves the world by cleansing it of this poisoning influence of Thulsa Doom's cult, and thereby becomes a legitimate hero. My version of what the Riddle of Steel is basically is that it's not the tool, it's not your, it's not your mind tricks, it's kind of like what's under your chest there. It's like if you have the strength of will, where your will is like that of steel, you can conquer death, you can conquer your enemies, and you can crush the snakes of the earth, and you can become a hero and all that. And with the movie going on and having all this imagery where the main antagonist is a snake who lures people to his corrupting influence through hedonism, and giving his cultist followers the most forbidden fruit, man flesh, and all that. They like gorge themselves on human flesh in an orgy of just hedonistic passion and lust, while this evil sorceress black magic using snake is just sitting above them on a throne, just kind of watching over them. And with that, accompanied with that kind of Garden of Eden kind of motif, of course, Conan is crucified and he is resurrected, and he saves mankind from the influence of that evil snake. So there's a lot of that, and it's not like, oh man, you're so clever, I thought about that, because it's so plain in there. It's like, forgive them, crumb, they know not what they do kind of stuff, because when he's crucified and all that. And John Milius also really liked mentioning stuff about that, like how Conan is not looking for Crumb to, like, why have you forsaken me or anything like that. Instead, he's acting out defiance, like when the vulture comes and pecks at his wound, he just bites into its neck and just defies letting himself die. It's great stuff. And I I always, when I think about the Riddle of Steel stuff, it's I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Ultimate Warrior comics, and I mean the World Wrestling Federation Ultimate Warrior. That Ultimate Warrior, he made a little comic line of a couple of comics, and he was looking to brand a certain little catchphrase to put on plastic lunch boxes and make it big, make the dineros. And he came up with this term called destrucity, meaning truce between one's destiny and reality. And when I heard that, of course, that's just kind of a silly way or like overly dramatic way of saying yeah, like perseverance, strength of will, you know, like confidence, make stop fantasizing, make things happen, basically Shia LaBeouf going, do it, you know, that kind of don't let your dreams be dreams. Like Destrucity, that's the Riddle of Steel to me. To me, the Riddle of Steel is Destrucity, but that's just my take on it. But that's kind of the Ubermensch pathos that Conan kind of goes through, because the stuff that I really disagree with Nietzsche are the stuff about the Ubermensch stuff, and I don't think that's something that's been grossly misinterpreted through history or anything like that. Because, like, I remember Ricky Gervais making stand-up jokes about, you know, Hitler meeting Nietzsche in the afterlife, and Nietzsche going apeshit over Adolf's interpretation of his work and stuff. There's lots of really messed up stuff there, especially after reading Beyond Good and Evil, which is pretty much where the Ubermensch stuff is. It's really kind of rough. It's, you know, stuff like, you know, that people are segmented into a higher class of people and a lower class of people, basically like progressive people who grasp history by the horns and move humanity's history forward, and then the lower conservative class who just live their life and give into the system and just kind of, you know, sacrifice of themselves so that those on the higher echelon can flourish and, you know, give back to humanity. And you know, through that, it's of course that that through sufficient sacrifice and stuff like that, these great men, it's this kind of, the whole history of the world is pretty much written in this very human perspective, where we look at it like a storybook of these character stories, where we look at history as if it's like this linear character arc story thing, where like, and then Napoleon came along, this great man, and then Alexander the Great, another great man, you know, moved history forward. And, you know, there's lots of things where, you know, there's gazillion variables and all these kind of butterfly effect, the stuff that you could throw in there. But when you write history that way, and then perception becomes kind of reality in people's eyes, when they read history that way, they start to like, oh, we need great men to lift us from this, you know, bad state of affairs. And Nietzsche's writing on the Ubermensch, I think, was very much founded in that. And I think a lot of populism was based off of that search for a great man. And in Conan, I think Conan kind of encompasses a lot of Nietzsche's views on an Ubermensch through this kind of opening quote of "What doesn't kill us makes us stronger," and Conan being this kind of self-made man. He's kind of a prototypical self-made man in a brutal, ruthless, you know, savage world where you become the man by slaughtering ruthlessly anyone that competes with you and stuff. It's like, and Conan's journey to that, you know, all the way from his father's words of wisdom in this kind of very nihilistic view, and then becoming like a slave, and especially once becoming a pit fighter. It's like once he's like a pit fighter, that's like, and especially the Mako narration on that, it's like he didn't care anymore, life and death the same, like he realized his self-worth, where he mattered, where it's like he's shoved into a situation, into these death matches where slaves are not even treated like gladiators, where gladiators would, kind of be more theatrical because they need to like build themselves kind of names and return later on to compete again, and being treated more like race horses and stuff like that. No, Conan's just in a fucking savage pit fighting circuit where every match is to the death with these brutal gladiatory weapons, just disemboweling and just killing one another, just breaking each other's arms and biting each other's throats open, and it's kind of an environment for him where it's where slaves, our lives hold no real value, and he learns to value himself as kind of a commodity, where he is a source for money for his owners, and it's like yeah, I have self-worth because I'm a valuable commodity. I can produce wealth to my owners, kind of thing, by snuffing out other human lives from the world, just brutalizing people and just ending their lives to just keep my own and to satiate the kind of realization of I have worth in the world, kind of. And that's like the nihilism kind of yanked to an 11, because it's like human life has no inherent value in his eyes, and he only has value because he's good at snuffing out other people and thereby being able to, create a profit for his owners. And even when he is like language and writing were made available, still after that, after reading all whatever scrolls he was reading, but still like provided like the expectation is that he is provided with an education, like he is being really groomed like a top racehorse or something, and then bred to the finest stock, like we need to get them Arnold genes into the gene pool and make use of that. Even after schooling himself on whatever those scrolls were teaching him, when he's asked about what is best in life, and it's basically just annihilation, torture, death, and screams of agony. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of their women. It's like, and being released right after that. It's like you can just look at Arnold's or Conan's owner, the red bearded guy, just kind of looking, like, damn, I just kind of, yeah, I've created myself a fine little sociopath here. Like it's like Conan is becoming like a legit monster, not just like a barbarian or something. He's becoming a legit monster, and it's kind of like, yeah, it's better to unshackle and release this fucking beast to the wild at this point, rather than have him risk the possible future of what keeping him might entail, or just sheer out of guilt, because when Arnold is brought as a little boy to the Wheel of Pain, you can see the red-bearded guy as a kid. He's sitting on the pole that Arnold starts to push on, and he's whipping him. And then when Arnold's grown up, he returns after Arnold is the last slave there pushing the wheel, and there's after that, as Conan's journey kind of continues, it's kind of like this, like a thief's life. It is like after, of course, befriending Subutai, there's some human elements noticed in him for the first time, but it's very much like he's driven by hate and rage, where he's focused on is getting his revenge on Thulsa Doom, and without like when Subutai is, I have not eaten for days, and he's like, who says you will? And it's like and he's making fun of the fact that he's about to be shredded to death by wolves and stuff like that. So, you know, and I love the scene soon after, right after he's set free, when he stumbles upon the Atlantean tomb, where he finds his Atlantean sword, you know, the oceans drank Atlantis, you know, and he finds these giants, the skeletons of these giants in the tomb, and the kind of the king of them, who has that ornamentation and all that. He's leaning on his sword, the Atlantean sword that Conan wields. Of course, Conan is the only man big enough and bad enough to wield a giant's sword. You know, maybe for the giant it was like a, you know, single-handed kind of like a, you know, little sword there, but for Arnold it's like a, like two-armed, like that, badass. But anyway, I love the image again where the skeleton is leaning on the sword, and when Arnold takes the sword, he crumbles. And it's like, again, just like with Conan's dad, because after that happens, Conan is all crumb because he's witnessed again like something akin to the riddle of steel, maybe the first clues on his journey forward. Because for that Atlantean conqueror king, that sword was a crutch, and without his little piece of steel, he crumbles into out of his domineering and authoritative pose, just kind of you know, even his crowned helmet kind of rolls off the ground and stuff. And yeah, that's another take that, well, that just kind of is on the same kind of line of thought as Conan's father's thinking on the riddle of steel. If the Atlanteans were also well, maybe the Atlanteans could have been the giants in the opening story, where fire and wind threw their bodies into the waters. Maybe, whatever. But still, because it's a Conan world, you never know how much fantasy there actually is, because it's kind of like with something like the Pirates of the Caribbean series. With every new movie, there's more fantasy in the world. So every new movie, there's a new crew of cursed supernatural pirates. So it's like in Conan, it's kind of like since in the source material, it's pretty high fantasy with all sorts of frost giants walking about, and the wizards doing lightning out of their fingertips and stuff like that. You know, even though the Conan movie is really low fantasy, it's I really love, by the way it uses magic. That's one of my favorite kind of ways of using magic in a low fantasy setting, where it's like whenever there's somebody using magic, it's pretty, it's not that powerful, but it's always special, because it's like it differs from the norm. And you know, you can see that when Thulsa Doom hypnotizes, you know, the Conan's mom in the beginning to kind of straighten her neck for him to lop it off, you can see Rexor and Thorgrim kind of looking, you know, kind of like not knowing what they're looking at, kind of thing, because it's not only is he using the hypnotism there to get his own rocks off, he's, you know, he has generals around him that he needs to kind of show who's boss, you know, kind of thing. Where of course when you're the leader of a snake cult, you need to show off your power every now and again. You could count, he didn't even need to be, you know, using hypnosis when he told one of his followers, the beautiful girl, to jump down from the ledge. You know, that could have just been, you know, a show of power through influence alone. But that's what happens, you know. So you could actually, you could make it so that where a lot of psychological mysteries, or not perhaps always mysteries, but still stuff like suggestion to that extent, where you can have someone so brainwashed that they'll gladly, like without hesitation, jump to their death because their cult leader says so. You could easily just kind of paint that up, just, in this kind of, give it some sort of an aesthetic of magic, and then have that same effect. It's kind of like when he turns into a snake in the orgy. It's kind of like, well, that didn't really like that wasn't anything to like yeah, I'm so powerful, I can turn into a slowly slithering snake. But it's to show, like, yeah, he's the leader of the snake cult. He has a snake helmet, he has snake swords, he has a snake banner. Everything about him is about snakes. So yeah, he can turn into a fucking snake. So it's like, oh, is he some sort of a demigod? Is he like, has he sold his soul to some evil gods to gain all this black magic and all that? And you don't need to know that. You don't need to know Thulsa Doom's backstory. It doesn't really add anything to what the movie is kind of going for, really. That's kind of something that I always kind of like when they make the remakes of stuff and all that. They always have to shove backstories to every single character. Needs to have some sort of dramatic, tragic backstory. Like, we don't need to know how Subutai came to be chained on the wall outside the Wolf Witch's hut and stuff like that, or anything. Whatever, tangent. But still, it's like, from there on in, when Conan goes to his little thieving adventures, it's again like he's just exercising his right to whatever the hell he wants, because it's might makes right. Might makes right killed his entire village and was proven right to him. Might makes right kind of took him as a slave, threw him, attached him to a wheel of torture, then threw him to a fighting pit circuit. Now that he's free, he's exercising that same learned behavior, basically, of those kind of values that he has. But they're shifting because he's making friends. He's having actual empathy for a fellow human being through Subutai and Valeria. And it's also funny, the theological debate that he has with Subutai on the fireside, because it's like it kind of condenses a lot of real life, what a lot of religion boils down to, or what a lot of god myths and tribal wars kind of break down to. It's just kind of like my god has a bigger penis than yours. It's kind of like it's just a dick measuring contest between two retards around a campfire there. But it's it's fun, and it's again like Milius kind of doing a little nod to Nietzsche's criticisms over organized religion and religion as an institution and all that stuff, because Conan, of course, worships a god, or he comes to worship a god, Crum, but Crum is basically just, he's kind of a just you could say Crum is a crutch as well at the end, because or rather he's there just so that Conan would have something to defy, because it's like, Crum is your god and steel is the only thing you can trust. And then Thulsa Doom has a different philosophy, and he worships like demons or whatnot, or at least that's what's said about him. And then Arnold defies the riddle of steel, and he defies Crum by saying, if you don't listen, then to hell with you. But yeah, it's kind of a, it's fantasy. It's there's a whole lot of really neat stuff going on, like when Arnold goes to the Mountain of Doom he goes to the Temple of Doom, and on the outskirts, there's also the kind of bottom tier followers of Thulsa Doom's cult, and it's in the DVD commentary, John Milius described them as literally hippies. And I know that John Milius hates hippies. He's one of those kind of like overly macho, manly man kind of conservative type of mountain man people. John Milius is, he, very much a Teddy Roosevelt fan, and that sort of the sort of person who has a cigar in his mouth and a shotgun on his shoulder. That kind of character, like in Big Lebowski, the I can't remember the name of the character, but John Goodman's character is pretty much just a caricature of of John Milius, because John Milius would go to freaking movie movie meetings where he would meet with like executives and stuff, and he would start the conversation by placing a pistol on the table, and it's like, what the hell? And then he complains that Hollywood blacklists conservatives like me. It's like, dude, who would want to deal with someone who starts a conversation by putting a fucking pistol on the table? But he's a character. He's out there, but he's a character, and a lot of an interesting one at that. And when you look at these stuff like how he came up with the name for Apocalypse Now, which he wrote or co-wrote, or I'm not exactly sure the extent of his writing on it, but he's the main writer at least. He came up with Apocalypse Now because he saw hippies with the peace symbol and with the moniker of Nirvana now, and he just took that peace symbol and drew it to resemble a bomber plane and just wrote Apocalypse Now under it. And that kind of gives the clear image of how he views hippies. And in the movie, those like bottom tier followers, they're just basically people kind of harping on the light aspects of what Thulsa Doom is preaching, and just getting high. They're just huffing this smoke on and doing whatnot. Just getting high, just these flower children. And when you look at the hippie movement, when it kind of degenerated from being a very strong anti-war kind of movement, and it degenerated into this hedonistic kind of thing where it's pretty much all about drugs and free love and that sort of stuff. I'm all for it, I like me some hedonism, but it's for someone like John Milius, that's kind of the image of a hippie that he despises. And in the movie, it's very much like these witless idiots just kind of preaching this horrible, deadly, cannibalistic faith and ideology and cult, and just, indulging themselves in excess. And then Conan comes, who's like, I am in charge of my own destiny. Destrucity comes in there and is like the absolute opposite of those people there. And it's kind of, I always love it, like when Conan is pretending like he's wearing the clothes of one of those low-ranking priests there that he like beats to death, and takes his clothes, and then he's like, oh shit, let's look at a reflecting pool here for a minute, and then some cunt comes and asks him, what do you see? And he like there's a little moment of infinity. I always think like there's gear work going in his head. What's the most pretentious thing I could say? Infinity. And it's so pretentious that the woman is like, good. and then just they just part ways, because it's like if you're taking hallucinogenic drugs and being high off of a snake cult, it's kind of like, dude, I see infinity, man, far out, bro. It's like throw stuff like that in there. That's a perfect cover. Like, well going, Conan. And yeah, it's like the whole cult thing with Thulsa Doom. mm, I really love it because it's with real cults, they tend to work in a pretty similar fashion. They pretty much brainwash people in the same way of where they take people who are kind of emotionally damaged people who are kind of outsiders, misfits, kind of people who are kind of still searching for themselves, and looking for an identity and kind of dealing with issues and whatnot. They take vulnerable people like that, and they kind of bash them mentally to smithereens. They kind of stomp them into this feeling like a fucking worm, into a pathetic, sinful, dirty, product of this corrupt society that's all about excess, or all sorts of subjugation, or exploitation or whatnot. They give you that kind of guilt. They crush you with it, and then they offer you a way out of that guilt and that self-hatred and all that. And the answer, the way out, is the cult, and usually the cult leader as this sort of a messiah kind of figure. It's like when you look at people like Charles Manson and stuff like that. Drug use was prevalent there. There were all kind of damaged, wandering youths, feeling like outsiders to the world they inhabited and all of that. And they were pretty much dealt with that kind of treatment. The same goes for, if you've ever heard of what Rasputin was up to in Siberia before he was recruited to the Russian courts, where he would run this little cult of his, where his mantra was that basically you can't get redeemed, or you can't get your sins washed off until you've reached a certain level of sinnerdom, where if you lie, or let's say you slap your mom, or you cheat on your husband or something like that, and you're like, I've sinned, please, give me repentance so that I can and Rasputin's kind of deal was that no, you can't get repentance for little stuff like that. You need to sin more in order to become like a fully fledged unrepentant sinner, and then you can kind of be wiped off clean, given a clean slate and stuff with the one fell swoop kind of thing. And yeah, he was there to provide his services. Like, yeah, if you're looking to, increase your sin, I'm here. Let's have a little orgy, And there they were, fucking this crusty, crusty fuck in Siberia in order to get their sins washed off by him. Convenient, But that's a lot of times cult leaders. They're in it mainly for exploitation. Some are, of course, just crazy and whatnot, but Thulsa Doom was all about power and influence and exploitation, because the way he used people and the way he would turn most likely the hippies, because they were the lower tier people, into soup and feed it to his more loyal people that he took into his temple's orgy gallery, and yeah, indulging in like how he was doing to Conan when he was trying to hypnotize him, saying to him that he's nothing without Thulsa Doom, like I'm the wellspring from which you flow. That if I had not killed your entire culture and your village and your parents and everything, you wouldn't be the man you are today. So everything you are, you owe to me, and that sort of thing. And then all like underlying it by saying my son and all that. And of course Arnold just breaks through that and yeah, destrucity, that stuff. Yeah, I love it. But it's and Conan's fight against Thulsa Doom when he whips his ass and he runs away, it's again like this like that something that happens with a lot of cults is that when they get backed into a corner, bad things happen. I can't remember the details on that. What was it like? It was like the Texas thing where the ATF agents shot that cult, and then they committed mass suicide together or something. Sorry for mentioning stuff I have I don't really know about, but still, it's once he gets his ass whipped, and basically all his generals and best soldiers are killed by Conan and Subutai. He pretty much attempts to get all of the rest of his followers to commit mass suicide, and it's just as they're preparing for this Thulsa Doom's light leading them straight to paradise if they kill themselves right here and now. Conan, of course, intercepts and stops it and kills Thulsa Doom. And it's I don't need it to have the hypnotism angle to it where Conan kills him and then the spell is broken. It doesn't need to be a literal spell. It's I think the quote that was said in 300 was pretty good, that they will see that even a god king can bleed, where their golden god emperor, this James Earl Jones, was proven not to be all powerful and holding ultimate sway over people. Arnold kind of inspires them to find it within themselves, their own little destrucity, their own riddle of steel, and they throw their flames to the reflecting pool and leave. It's like the spell of Thulsa Doom being a demigod or something like that, like a living god or whatnot, gets broken when his clearly flesh and blood head gets tossed to the stairs, and the broken sword, after it. It's like, yeah, here goes one false riddle of steel, here goes another, kind of thing. And I love that. And yeah, I also really like it that after Conan kills him, he goes and he sits and he ponders the whole thing. It's like, I like that Conan has so little dialogue in this. I wouldn't mind him having even less, because of course Arnold has more of a well, of course he's pretty much a king of charisma, but he's much better at speaking to a crowd and being charming. I mean, Arnold's charisma is that Arnold is extremely charming when you watch his interviews and stuff, especially when you watch Pumping Iron or something. Like, God, Arnold is awesome. But that's the thing. He's charming and he's funny and everybody loves him, that kind of thing. But when he's like intimidating and he's like Conan the Savage, I think he has more of a presence than that sort of oratory skill of delivering lines very convincingly. So I wouldn't have mind Conan being even less of a man of even more of a man of few words. But yeah, it's like he sits there just pondering, and I really like that. Just like the image of him as an old king, just kind of leaning on his fist, pondering. And I never liked the deleted scene of talking about spring winds. It's way too poetic for the tone of the rest of the movie. I feel the poetic lines only fit people like Thulsa Doom and Mako and these kind of wizardly people. But then when Conan all of a sudden busts out this kind of uh, these soliloquies or what stuff about nostalgia and spring wind and all that. He's much too sophisticated and smooth and all that to fit the rest of his character. And I don't know. Maybe I'm just pulling that out of my ass. I just never cared for it. Could be because I never saw it as a kid, and I only saw it once I got the DVD into my hands. But still, and yeah, I just love the movie. And when talking about a lot of the other stuff having to do with it, it's when you look at the movie itself, kind of, yeah, you could always argue that you can't look at art or anything having to do with personal taste and that sort of thing objectively. Of course, you can't look at anything purely objectively. Well, maybe math, whatever. Well, with these kind of cases, you can look at the performances of a lot of the actors, and when you look at especially the group of adventurers, where there's Arnold, Valeria, and Subotai, it matters that none of them is a very convincing actor. Arnold is a very convincing presence. Subotai and Valeria both look good. They look good on those, posters. They look good on those like those 5x10 photos, and they look, they look great. They look very photogenic. They look like Subotai is, Jerry Lopez is very believable as a kind of a Mongolian archer kind of character. And, I love that aesthetic, that it's kind of a mixture of a Viking and Mongolian stuff. Maybe it's more Viking stuff first, and then he was taken to the east. Then it's more Mongolian stuff. But still, I love that aesthetic, really great. That doesn't get used too often because it's always this King Arthur type of stuff. So but the thing is that I like the way Werner Herzog, for example, another great director, great director. He has the tendency of casting couple of legit stars that can carry a film, and then casting just about everyone else as just these real people, these locals, these interesting people. And he doesn't just use them as extras, he uses them in scenes. There's entire scenes where there's a long conversation between just somebody he met at location, just some maybe somebody who was in the crew, just kind of carrying something, and when everybody was taking a break, they started talking, and Herzog saw that and was like, oh, he's so interesting, I'm gonna put him into my movie. And and then give them lots of stuff to do, dialogue and everything. I think that works a lot of times. Especially when you have the star power of Klaus Kinski, as the person who's carrying the load. When you have him and then maybe like a female lead or something like that, the rest don't need to be that great because he'll carry the load. It's kind of like when you look at Star Trek The Next Generation, only Patrick Stewart is like a legit great actor. The rest are okay, they're TV grade actors, but every time Picard is there, he carries the rest of them, that he like lifts them up to greatness. Uh, that's something I kind of miss in a lot of the other Star Trek series, because a single great actor like that can do wonders to a TV cast. Um, but with Conan, Arnold was this was kind of a launching pad. This and Terminator were pretty much Conan and Terminator were pretty much the movies that made Arnold into a very desirable commodity in the Hollywood machine. So this was kind of a launching pad for Arnold, that we need to take all the use out of having the ability to use someone like Arnold, like Milius had said to Dino De Lorenzo, who produced the movie, that if we didn't have Arnold, we would have to build him. Because Milius has this, especially with this movie, he has this kind of approach where he gets this image of what he sees the character as, and then he goes and gets it. Like, for example, for Subotai, Jerry Lopez, who performed the role, was his surfing buddy, but he had it in his head that that's what Subotai looks like. And after failed casting choices leading up to it, let's just shove Jerry Lopez into this buddy of mine into acting school and crash course, and let's just put him in the movie. And I think if Arnold was a greater actor, Valeria and Subotai, it wouldn't matter that they're not great actors. They're not even that good of actors, but they still pull it off. They give it their best. That's what I always like about Arnold, is that even if he's kind of a silly oaf a lot of times, he's still he's like a consummate professional. He always gives his best. And when you look at those behind the scenes stuff where he gets himself cut and scraped, and he's always willing to work as hard as it demands, and even harder than that, and it's commendable. Arnold is a total workhorse, because he approached, I have his autobiography there, and when he talks about Conan, he doesn't dedicate too much time to any single movie project, but when he talks about his movie making career, he approaches it very much like he approached bodybuilding, as a competition and as a competitor. To him, the measuring stick of competing in Hollywood was basically box office, and that's how successful was your movie. So Arnold was never someone to become a great actor, a great thespian, that kind of thing. He kind of he was looking to brand himself, his image, and become successful. That's kind of his motif, and he works as hard in doing that and accomplishing that as he did in his athletic career in bodybuilding. And that's commendable when you consider the weaknesses that he has when it comes to acting. So it's accentuate the positives and hide the negatives when it comes to Arnold. So minimal dialogue for Conan, and lots of stuff where he gets to pose with his sword, and show off his body and do all that. And it's great. But here, when you try and have an objective view and kind of look at how good is the movie really, and when your great actor is the main villain of the movie, James Earl Jones, it's that's not the sort of role that carries a film. It's not like the star that the movie gets kind of billed with, or it's like someone who's almost all the time, on the screen carrying each scene kind of thing. So it suffers because of that. But it's not a big thing if you're someone who's willing to look beyond that. I remember I first saw Conan when it came from the television, and I was watching it with a friend of mine, and my friend hated it. He was a big fantasy geek. He was really into, all this kind of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, all sorts of swords and sorcery stuff. But he hated Conan the Barbarian, and I loved it when I first saw it. It could be that maybe because he despised it so much that it fueled me my loving it more out of kind of like well, this is my own personal thing, like nobody loves Conan, so it's like I'm the Conan fan guy. Like everybody in a friend circle has something that they're known as a fan of or something like that, whatever. But yeah, I remember liking it right off the bat, and I've always been a fantasy fan, and I've always loved this low fantasy sword and sorcery stuff. This, very much like this. Not so much about orcs and elves stuff, even though I like that stuff as well. But it's like, Arnold is Arnold. Those swords look incredibly amazing. Those costume designs, those locations, those everything just looks great. And the soundtrack, I remember like not knowing as a kid that there is such a thing as movie soundtracks that they sell on CDs, and I would go to my mom because she would play the flute in the orchestra, so she knew classical music. And I would go to her and be like, I really like the music in Conan the Barbarian. What kind of music could I get that's similar to that and stuff? And we were going through like music stores and not finding anything I liked. If I had a time machine, I'd just kind of go back and say, of course, I first say that there's a Conan the Barbarian soundtrack out there, you little idiot. But I would also say, in terms of classical music, try Sergei Prokofiev, that's the inspiration for this music. So yeah, after searching and searching, I once just went to a music store and I saw that they had the soundtrack for Coppola's Dracula, and that's kind of like what? There are movie soundtracks, and I immediately asked if there's a Conan one, and there was. He ordered it to the store, and I got it, and I listened the hell out of it. Basil Bolidor is he's just the best. I mean, it's just fantastic. His music in Conan, his music in RoboCop, his music in Starship Troopers, his music in Hunt for the Red October, and multiple other places as well. It's just fantastic, man. It's like, and I remember listening to that album at home from my parents' stereo in the living room, and really like, yeah. And it's kind of funny because we had this window that pointed to our neighbor's yard. And when the track for, you can search this on YouTube, the Mountain of Power theme, the that track came on, I looked outside and my neighbor, like this old, a scrappy guy, wearing nothing but his, tidy whities and boots, was walking to his mailbox in the snow, in like thick snow, exactly to the rhythm of the music, to this barbarian theme, and he's just shuffling through the snow in his undies. It was it kind of left an impression on me whenever I hear that song. But yeah, I listened the hell out of that, and I love the soundtrack. I still listen to it almost every week. It's like I can't get enough of it. It's like a huge, like whenever I come up with role-playing campaigns and whatnot, it's always music is the main inspiration for a lot of like visual imagery that kind of gets created in my head. And Conan the Barbarian soundtrack is pretty much, regardless of the campaign, I always listen to it to get kind of ideas. And if you've listened through the for example, the Werewolf the Werewolf the Dark Ages campaign I did, there were a lot of Conan stuff in there, like all sorts of things about And of course, right now, off the top of my head, I can't remember almost any. Oh yeah, John's character got crucified, and a raven came along, and he just, and all that. There's all sorts of references like that in my games. And even in the Midnight City campaign, there was a cult that was all about hedonism, and underneath they were cannibals in their basement. So I can't. And of course, there was a huge cauldron that got just kind of, infidel defilers. And I love that scene when Arnold and the gang just kind of go in as party poopers, just to the orgy, and they indeed defile their sacred temple by throwing their sacred cannibal feast on the ground and killing all the people who are there to indulge in excess and break down snake pillars and whatnot. So it's like, it's just great stuff. And yeah, it's there's tons of stuff I love about it. It's also one of those movies that I really like the DVD commentary to. I've every now and again when I'm like drawing stuff, I've sometimes put it on and put the DVD commentary on to where I don't have to like look at the screen while I'm drawing, but I can listen to John Milius and Arnold chat during the movie. And it's kind of funny because it's Arnold at this time was the governor of California, and and I can't remember if John Milius had his stroke yet or whatnot, but he did sound pretty tired. But then again, he's pretty morbidly obese kind of guy, so sounding tired kind of goes with that territory, and kind of out of breath and stuff. And it's kind of funny. The commentary track is kind of fun because Arnold has forgotten so many things that happen in the movie. He's constantly like surprised that like I didn't expect that to happen. And it's like it's cool because he's constantly asking about questions about everything. So it's like, yeah, we viewers get to know a lot of information of what was going on with Milius when he wrote certain bits into the movie. And of course, there's all sorts of like Arnold. I think he says exactly about 100,000 times. It's always like when John Milius says something like, "That extra was this and this guy," and exactly. And now look at this huge axe. Exactly. It's always the same kind of reaction. That's kind of a common usage with a couple of my friends, just to react exactly. To a lot of things. But yeah, it's Conan. Conan sadly belongs into this kind of cast of where Highlander and RoboCop and other movies I really love kind of dwell in, where they constantly try to revive that franchise and make sequels, make remakes, make TV shows, make video games, whatnot, and they're always shit. It's like the original is great. It's always like fantastic. I love Highlander, I love RoboCop, and I love Conan the Barbarian, but when you go to Conan the Destroyer, it's like when you read Conan's Arnold's autobiography, and he goes into length about how difficult it was to work with Dino De Lorenzo, the producer, or the studio head there, where pretty much every good decision that happens in the movie is something that they had to fight tooth and nail with him for. And once John Milius was out of the picture for Conan the Destroyer, it's like, well, this is what you get when there's nobody fighting Dino De Lorenzo. And Arnold's career was at that point already like soaring, so he could easily just go make his little shitty Conan sequel and get a payday out of it, and nobody would, poo-poo him for doing something like that, because apart from Conan, and apart from Flash Gordon, I don't think Dino has done too many good films. I'll have to double check, but he's done with Arnold. He's done Conan, Conan the Destroyer, Red Sonja, and Raw Deal. And apart from Conan the Barbarian, those are all pretty much shit. Yeah, Conan the Destroyer. It's I think it was Roger Ebert who said that it's your friendly neighborhood barbarian. And that's kind of like when you make a franchise and you want to cash in by selling a lot of toys and merchandise and all that, and all of a sudden you have to make this savage barbarian story into basically a PG movie or PG-13 movie or something like that, where you can't show blood and there's just silly monsters and stupid comedic sidekicks that are on par with like Rob Schneider or somebody like that. It's like, it's just atrocious. But yeah, also the remake, I could stomach like the first 15 minutes of it. I remember being hyped when I saw the first pictures because Jason Momoa was relatively unknown, pretty much unknown back then, because it was first Conan, then Game of Thrones, then Justice League, that where he's basically known for. So when I first saw his pictures for Conan, I was like, yeah, it's not the Arnold look, but then again, Arnold wasn't the original Conan look. You know, it's like a lot of people who are really big fans of Conan, the Robert E. Howard stories and the comics and whatnot, weren't too big into the Arnold movie because it's so different. But that's John Milius wanting to make a Viking movie with a lot of these Nietzsche influences, a lot of these this religious symbolism here and there, imagery, and all sorts of things like this that kind of clash with what Conan is about in the original source material. But then again, a lot of people bitched and moaned about the Lord of the Rings movies as well. So, you know, when you're a true fan of something, it's hard to please everybody, but I always enjoy people when they take like a source material or some original work. I always enjoy them making it their own. Like, I wish the Lord of the Rings movies wouldn't be billed as J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings movies, but as Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings movies. Like, the books and the source material are Tolkien's. They're his. Everything about them is his. But the Peter Jackson movies are really Peter Jackson movies. If somebody like a Terry Gilliam or somebody like that would have made Lord of the Rings, it would be very different from what you see, and it still would have bared the title of J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, movie trilogy. But yeah, Conan. I don't know. I'm not sure if I can come up with too many other things to say about it. It's one of those movies that I just like to talk with people about. It's like one of those movies where I just instantly get this kind of nostalgic boost, and like every other line I hear, my hair starts to stand on my arm, everything like that. It's one of those movies where when I look at it objectively, it's like, yeah, it's not the greatest movie ever made, but it's a movie I love. It's in the same camp as Highlander or RoboCop, even though RoboCop is pretty damn good. And a pretty smart movie as well. But it's kind of, RoboCop has that same fate where I feel like a lot of people haven't watched them again in their adult age, and they base their opinions on what they remember them as younger people or or as kids even, because a lot of people, when they remember RoboCop, they don't remember the social satire. They don't remember all that smart commentary on Reaganomics and this kind of corporate greed and militarization of the police force and privatization of these private sector, these public sector positions like police. And I really like it that the RoboCop remake, even though it's just, I still like it as a robot movie, that it again took the social satire stuff and made it its own. Like, it's talking there's so much. Its main theme is using drones, basically, and it's a very good topic. It's a topical topic because there's all sorts of things. Bombing campaigns having to do with drone strikes. It's a ripe subject to make a film about, really. Even the wasn't the Dallas shooter was killed by a bomb disposal robot. So basically, an American citizen can be killed by drone strikes. basically. But yeah, that's a good example of I think where people remember RoboCop as a ultra violent kind of superhero robot movie, and a lot of people, what they remember about Conan from their childhood is just that stuff. But if they would watch it as adults, they might see that there's stuff to really like read in between. Well, I don't mean to make it sound like it's something like Hitchcock's Vertigo or something like that, where you're like, every single gesture can be read in this kind of psychoanalytic way, and all of a sudden everybody's rubbing their noses and pinching their shirts like Zizek, like you can see that Conan is definitely talking about Nietzsche in this scene. It's not like that. I'm not going for that. But it's a smarter movie than a lot of people give it credit for. It's not great. The cinematography is good. The soundtrack is good. The set design, everything. The script is great. I love John Milius' writing. Especially after watching Apocalypse Now, and when I was a little older, it's only John Milius can write somebody like Lieutenant Kilgore. that I love the smell of napalm in the morning, kind of smells like victory. Only he can write like such macho lines, and of course, when it comes to, like, he wrote the speech for Sean Connery in The Hunt for Red October when he gets on the intercom and speaks to his crew, and he wrote a lot of little speeches and little dialogue scenes for a lot of people's movies. Like, he wasn't given too many full projects after a certain amount of reputation was built around him, but he was still very much utilized as this kind of very useful kind of writer who could really write good juicy dialogue, and I really like his stuff. Epics and dialogue are his thing. He's really good into that. I haven't seen Red Dawn. So I don't want to comment on that, because Red Dawn is one of those movies that reportedly hasn't aged too well. But I love Milius, so I'm pretty sure I'd watch that with a certain glee in my eye, because he's like, in Conan I have despicable hippies, and in Red Dawn, communists. It's like, only Milius can write this stuff, it's Conan, it's great. So yeah, I decided to make one of these videos because I like listening to podcasts. I like listening to long, rambly videos. I have no idea how long this video has been now, but it's been longer than an average video. And yeah, let me know if you like this sort of format, because I gladly just ramble about whatever the hell comes to mind, and whether it's a movie I love or some other subject, because I can ramble. I can ramble on and on and on about stuff. But yeah, um, Conan. Yeah, I love it. See ya.